All right, let's welcome into Straight Fire a first-time guest on the podcast, and oh boy, she might have the sports book of the summer. Christine Brennan, longtime USA Today columnist, has a new book out titled "On Her Game: Caitlyn Clark and the Revolution in Women's Sports." Christine, how are you?
Oh, I'm great, Jason. Thanks for having me. How are you doing?
I'm excellent. Thanks for sending me the book. It's going to make for great summer reading. It just so happens Caitlyn Clark's in the news kind of sort of often recently, Christine. I mean, it is such a massive story. She has hit this league like a comet. Let's start from the beginning. Obviously, you've done a lot of books before, and you've covered everything for USA Today. I'm just curious, what were the origins of this book on Caitlyn Clark?
Jason, I'm going to say it started in my kitchen, and I'm not one of those women, the old line about women in the kitchen, right? You do not want me in the kitchen. I mean, I'm not a cook, right? It's order out or restaurants, whatever. But I was aware of Caitlyn Clark, her sophomore year at Iowa. But I'm fortunate to cover the Olympics. So like I'm at the Beijing Olympics, the Winter Olympics in 2022 with masked
Mm.
up and being tested COVID. We're all in the midst of
Oh
it.
yeah, yeah.
When she had some monster game against Michigan that people kind of, I think was a moment people saw her. I missed that because I was, halfway around the world, happily so. And so now it's her junior year. It's February of 2023. And I went to Northwestern, but my siblings, all three siblings, and a brother-in-law and a niece all went to Indiana. And the Indiana women's basketball team was number 2 in the country, and they're playing Iowa. I knew Caitlyn Clark was on the team, obviously, and I was watching on my iPad. And at the very end of that game, Indiana's up by 1, and Iowa's got a second and a half, and of course they're inbounding to Caitlyn, and she breaks free, and it's kind of sideways and one leg askew, and just heaving the ball kind of from the parking lot, and it goes in,
Mm.
and they win the game, and all of a sudden, she's going crazy, and the place is going crazy. I think they win by 1, so may have my numbers off a little on that. But bottom line is, it's just this moment, and ESPN showing highlight after highlight after highlight. And I'm very lucky. I've covered a lot. I've been around the world a lot, covered Super Bowls, Olympics, Wimbledon's, Daytona 500. I mean, I've been very fortunate. I found myself kind of weirdly watching it over and over again. Like,
Mm.
what had I just seen? My family, as we're texting, same thing. Friends like texting me, did you just see that? This is just a February Big Ten basketball game. And I kind of, at that moment, like, this is interesting. And for me, it was really, I think, informative to not be on press row. Not
Mm.
that press row changes it, but there's a way of kind of being on press row, like you're racing on deadline, right? You've done all this kind of
Oh
stuff.
yeah.
You're to get sound, get in the locker room, out of the locker room, whatever. And it maybe makes it a little more just work, or more like I've seen this before, versus kind of watching it, on this iPad. Wow, that was really something. And I think that helped inform me once this Caitlyn Clark thing started getting going, of just how big a deal she is, and how people, I was an observer. I wasn't a fan. I was just watching, but it's observers, fans, people in their homes starting to catch on to this. And all of a sudden the TV ratings, once she and Iowa against LSU, 9.9 million watching. And then the next year when she takes Iowa back to the women's Final Four, and the final game, improbably, that Iowa team shouldn't, was not expected to get anywhere near that. And then they end up with 18.9 million viewers for the women's final, and the next night the men have 4 million fewer. The first time ever the
That's
women's
right.
final in the NCAA beats the men by 4 million. And the women were in the afternoon on network, ABC, but afternoon versus nighttime, stunning, no matter what the comparison is. And I think that really kind of showed me and started me on this, kind of following her, keeping an eye on her, not excluding other things, but from a different point of view. I finally wrote a column about the Olympics. I thought they should absolutely put her on the team. And should she stay for a 5th year? She had the COVID opportunity to have the
That's
5th year
right. Yeah.
COVID year. And I thought, she probably wouldn't, but, no one's more loved than Caitlyn Clark in Iowa for that 5th year. I wrote that in February of 2024. So that's the first column I wrote almost a year later. And then started writing a few more columns, and as interest was growing, as people were trying to minimize her, as got Diana Taurasi saying not the nicest things, and Cheryl Swoop saying strange things, and started to really kind of cover it more. And then finally, literally, I met her. I covered a game or two in Indiana when the Olympic swimming trials were in Indianapolis. If they'd not been there, I wouldn't have been at the Fever Games. And I went over to those 5 blocks away from Lucas Oil and the swimming, and started, again, wrote a couple columns, and did get a chance to meet her and have a 5-minute chat off the record, just finally meeting this person. And she was thanking me for my coverage, and I'm thanking her for the greatest show in sports. And anything, one thing led to the next, and it was just an idea. An editor and I were talking at Scribner, and sure enough, I had a book deal, and I was writing a book after I got back from the Paris Olympics. And just that point, I'm just going right to Indy and just following the team and asking Caitlyn Clark questions when I get a chance. Anything, nothing's off limits, no holds barred, journalistic book. Not authorized, but Caitlyn certainly was incredible in answering anything I asked her. And of course, the coaching staff and the practices I was in, and all the other things that come with writing a book about a moment and a time, and also reporting the heck out of it and having breaking news in the book. So yeah, it truly, I know that's a long answer, but it all started with watching on my iPad and seeing something that even in this stage of my career, Jason, having covering Tiger Woods the length of his career, covering Olympics and Michael Phelps and Katie Ledecky and Simone Biles and, Carl Lewis back at the '84 Olympics in LA. There was something about this kid and the way she was shooting and what was happening that was truly intriguing to me. And obviously, well, clearly I'm not alone in the country, as people have fallen obviously in love with everything about her, as I've, of course, continued to cover her journalistically.
Yeah, so those names you just mentioned are like Mount Rushmore type names, but I think you're probably right. She's headed there. That season you're talking about, that was the one where they met LSU in the title game, right?
That was her junior year.
Because I remember my kids had spring break. We were in Hawaii, and my wife and my daughter plays hoops. So we had gotten into Caitlyn Clark a little bit, and we start following this, and we're in Hawaii. It's in the middle of the day, and we're like, all right, we got to get to a TV. And we went to like the bar next to the pool, and we're like, can you put the LSU game on? And we're watching it while in Hawaii on spring break. Like my family won't let me do that for regular sports. Okay. This was a unique situation. And Clark, she's been basically the biggest deal in women's sports. I know people don't want to hear this, but women's team sports ever. Can we say that? Or Christine, is that out of bounds?
No, definitely women's team sports. Absolutely. Nothing even close. And I think it's important to say, and I know you did say women's team sports, because tennis kind of is in its own category, right? And when you've got Althea Gibson breaking the color barrier in the 50s, I mean, that's incredible what she did, winning a few Grand Slam tournaments as an American woman, a Black American woman way, way, way back. And then, of course, Billie Jean King and Chris Evert and Martina Navratilova, and then the last 25 years, Venus Williams and Serena Williams. Extraordinary. And the equal prize money that Billie Jean King got in '73 at the US Open, when it took another quarter century for the other 3 Grand Slams to have equal prize money. So yes, you kind of have put tennis in its own category. But it's also an individual sport, and it's also not a sport where there's a home game every other day, or
leagues.
Yeah, right. So in terms of league, what do we build on? As kids growing, I grew up in the suburbs of Toledo, and I was following the Detroit Tigers, and we had season tickets to the Toledo Mud Hens, and every day in the newspaper you could see the standings, for my AAA Mud Hens, and then the Tigers were the parent club. And then, and you'd follow the NBA, you'd follow the NFL, the standings, who's playing where, where are these games? That's the backbone of American sports. And that's how kids start watching sports, cheering for their hometown team, or, falling in love with the Pittsburgh Steelers or the Miami Dolphins or whatever it might be. Well, women's sports has never been a player in that space, right? It's never. They've tried, but it just never has caught on. And we have a male-dominated mainstream sports media. It's tough to crack. Got a very, very heavily packed sports landscape, and to try to then wedge another sport in, that's hard. The WNBA gets started in 1997 after the success at the '96 Atlanta Olympics, the gold medal there, and And they actually had some really big crowds in Detroit. They had some nice TV ratings when there were only 3 or 4 channels back then. But in general, it was ignored. It was given short shrift. Newspapers would put the summer intern on it.
Yeah.
The idea is to keep the arenas open. A lot of these owners were NBA owners who wanted to have something to, fill the arena in the summertime. And they'd have girls from camp, and you'd get these high-pitched squeals from all the
Right.
girls in the crowd. But it never really, really caught on as much as I wanted it to catch on. And I certainly talked to editors and wrote and talked about things on TV. I did a lot, and so many other people did too. It just never really caught on until this kid from Iowa shows up, chucking it from the parking lot. And all of a sudden now it truly is in that major league conversation, sports conversation, obviously, that you have every day. And so many of us have. And it truly is remarkable that it's happened. And, I know a lot of people, there's a lot of friction, a lot of controversy.
Lots.
Yeah, right. You got to give credit to Caitlyn Clark, because it's attendance figures, moving to bigger arenas, selling out the arenas. 24 regular season games last year in the WNBA had 1 million or more viewers. 21 of the 24 of regular season featured Caitlyn Clark. It was either Indiana Fever or the All-Star Game. 21 out of 24. You cannot deny the impact this one woman has made on a league that so deserved the attention, but never got it.
So, and that's the thing, the attention, it's like, it's similar to the NBA finals, which are happening now. Everybody's like, well, the NBA is not doing a good job marketing the finals. Well, no, not really. It's just that the casual fans aren't into this story, right? They're just, I'm sorry, they just don't know the Pacers that well. They don't know or care about OKC. No matter how good the players are, you can't force anything on someone. But the opposite's happening here. People are, and I know that Diana Taurasi doesn't want to hear this, but for the first time in league history, people are seeking out the WNBA, being like, I want to find this game. I want to watch this game. That's never happened before. So I guess my question would be, what is it about Clark that has America so captivated? It can't just be the threes. It can't just be that she's from Little Indiana. It can't just be that she's white. Like, is there one thing, or maybe it's just a ton of things combined?
Yeah, I think certainly, starting from Iowa as a launching pad is extraordinary, because that is where 6-on-6 girl basketball, which I deal with in the book as well, where I talk about the history there, going back to the 1920s, girls were playing 6-on-6 basketball. What that meant was they couldn't cross the center line, I guess, because people thought if they ran full court, that they might not be able to have children or something.
What?
Yeah,
Oh my goodness.
I know. It's
I
really,
did not know that.
It's fascinating. So you had 3 defenders and 3 offensive players from each team on one side of the court, and then the same on the other. And girls in high school grew up not knowing, if you were a defender, you never shot. And if you were a shooter, you never defended. And eventually this one, as great as this was, and they'd fill up the Des Moines arena, the auditorium for the finals, and everyone it's kind of like Hoosiers, everyone comes around from the movie Hoosiers, from the state, and the girls, after they put the bucket up in the hayloft, and the girls were shooting after they did their chores on the farm, and the teams, whatever teams won, and there was no delineation of the size of the high school, just like Hoosiers, just like what Indiana had. So, the little school can beat the big school. They'd all meet in Des Moines, and the cars, the caravans of people going to Des Moines for these games. It was huge. What that tells us, as ridiculous as it was that they couldn't cross the center line, and that changed, by the way, when Iowa girl high school players were not being recruited by college coaches, because you can't, how do you recruit someone that doesn't know how to play defense? How do you recruit someone? So the push started internally in Iowa too, to like, some of the players obviously made it out, and Jan Jensen and Lisa Bluter, the former coach and the current coach at Iowa, both played. Jan Jensen was a superstar 6-on-6, and they both played college. But in general, most of the kids never had a chance because they weren't playing the right game. But you've got this attitude of love of girls sports and love of girls basketball at a very, very early time in our history, well before Title IX, which was signed in 1972. So that's going on. I think there's a mindset there. Then I do truly believe, I agree with you, it's not just the logo threes, but the logo threes are the kind of thing. I've got a chapter title in On Her Game, and the chapter is "You Can't Take Your Eyes Off Her." And it's a quote from Curtis Strange, the two U.S. Open golf champion.
Yeah.
Was talking to Curtis about Tiger Woods and Caitlyn Clark about a year ago, actually for a USA Today column. And then I used some of that in the book. And, he's like, don't run to the bathroom. Don't leave the room when she's bringing the ball up. You just never know what's going to happen. And that, I mean, for anyone to say that is amazing. For, hey, men's golf, right? It's kind of guys, and Curtis is a great guy. I like him a ton. But I wouldn't necessarily think that the men's golf world would be your number one target audience for women's basketball.
Right.
And I'm saying that with a big smile because I like those guys a lot. But that's not your fan base that you would think of. And here it is. Now it is. So I think that's it. The passing, this, Jason, the passes are absolutely extraordinary. Again, if she's not chucking it from the parking lot, she's literally going to pass the ball behind her back. She's going to find someone who's open. The players are running like, by the way, sorry, I've got a big storm brewing here behind me if you hear noise in Washington. The players are running. Her teammates can't wait to just run down the court. She's eyes up as she's bringing the ball up. So it's anticipation. And you can, if you could ever hear anticipation in a crowd, you can hear it in Indiana. There's something about like, people are just, what's going to happen with bringing the ball down the court? I think that's why people buy tickets, take their daughters, granddaughters, their sons, their grandsons, whoever to the games. But I also think it's the reason people tune in. It's just the absolute thrill of what's happening next, which is in many ways the very definition of good entertainment. And that's what she provides, whether she's dribbling the ball up the court, whether she's passing or shooting. I think that's it. Being a white woman, absolutely. Any of us should say this. I deal with the racial issue in the book in a big way. And talk about the history of a 74% Black league and the difficult times starting that league and the difficulties that these great women like Maya Moore and so many others, Cheryl Swoops and others over the years, just to get attention. They got some, but to have people take them seriously and to cover them, like a men's sport, that just wasn't happening back in the day. And so all of that, I think you put into play, and the timing was right. With the WNBA, you've got a pro league she can go to. Whereas like the 99 Women's World Cup Soccer, which I think everyone remembers, Brandi Chastain whipping her shirt over her head. I covered that July 10, 1999 in the Rose Bowl. That was huge. And they made the team made the cover of Time, Newsweek, People, and Sports Illustrated. Only time ever that one story has made those 4 covers in a week ever. And that's the U.S. women's soccer team and Brandi Chastain. Well, that was great. And then, remember the nation was just riveted by these players. And basically the next time we saw them, other than some friendlies and Olympic preparation, was the Olympic Games in 2000. I covered the game in Melbourne for the Sydney Olympics, where they started their Olympic quest. They won the silver medal. And that was 14 months later.
Yeah.
So Caitlyn Clark, from the moment she plays her last college game to being drafted in the WNBA, is 8 days, during which time she was on Saturday Night Live. 8 days. Yeah. And the women's soccer team, which is a comparison, a team versus individual, but the same kind of national love. And that team goes away for 14 months, 14 months, 8 days. I think that really helped to keep it going. And that fan interest could just go, there's a bridge right to the WNBA. And clearly it did go right to the WNBA.
Yeah. It's weird, the brushback that they're getting or that they're giving Clark. I know you interviewed, I'm sure, 1 million people for the book. I'm mostly curious. This 74% Black league is interesting. Did you get a sense that there was, I know the word jealousy is very polarizing, but like there's been a lot of great African-American basketball players in the WNBA, a ton of them, dozens, I'm sure, Hall of Fame Cheryl Swoops, and they never got this attention that Clark's getting. And I just wonder, and I'm asking, do you think that there is some jealousy and that's why there was so much blowback last year and this year already for Clark?
Yeah, I do think that's the case. And I do have some quotes in the book and some people that I talked to that kind of discuss this issue for sure. I mean, I deal with it. I mean, you have to deal with this in
Yeah.
a book that's an honest portrayal of Caitlyn Clark and this time in women's sports and in our culture, and of course in the WNBA. And yeah, and I don't think that's shocking to anyone, right? I mean, you've been doing something for a long time and you've been trying hard, and people, mostly people haven't paid attention. I mean, the TV ratings have clicked up a little, but in general, it's been an afterthought. And
Yes.
I've hated that. Oh my gosh, I worked for CNN and ABC. I'm honored to do that. And when we were talking about the NBA in the bubble during COVID in 2020, and all the civil the social injustice and their action, the incredible protests and the things that the players were doing in the NBA, I made sure when I was talking to the anchor on air to say, well, let's also talk about the WNBA and what they're doing about George Floyd's murder and what they're doing about Black Lives Matter and other things like that. It was like, oh, we're just kind of forgetting the WNBA. I'm not blaming anyone. It's just easier to talk about the NBA and what as they were doing, civil disobedience, and just obviously on the very important topic of civil rights and the terrible treatment of and murder of some Black men and Black women, because of on the by the police. So many issues there, of course, as we know. And George Floyd was huge, terrible tragedy, awful at that particular moment. And so, I think it's easy to kind of go, geez, we're never getting attention. And and also I think you settle into something at that point, like this is our world. Well, then here comes a woman, obviously great player, deservedly so, getting the spotlight. Maybe that surprises some people, but as we described a few moments ago, there's a lot that goes into the entertainer that Caitlyn Clark is.
Yes.
That bringing grandma and grandpa, who would never have even known what time a WNBA game, they wouldn't even known there was a WNBA game on TV, now are trying to figure out on their cable package or their streaming, whatever, where is that channel? So we can, or do I have Prime so I can watch the streaming? I mean, people are doing that. I know they are. I mean, family members have been doing it, and I've found out about that. Like, do we have Ion on our TV? Where is that?
Yes, I'd never heard of that channel.
I never had either. And like, oh, okay, I got it. There it is. Even NBA TV, like, most people probably hadn't turned that on until they wanted to watch Caitlyn Clark. Okay, now this is all happening. The way I look at it, and I think it's very important to discuss this, I'm very proud of all the people I was able to interview and the voices that I was able to have in the book. One of the most proud moments was spending time talking to Dr. Harry Edwards. Of course, Dr. Edwards is the renowned voice of reason, of social activism, of obviously the issue of Black athletes. And he was, in fact, the impetus for the Black Power salute at the 1968 Mexico City Olympics. So Dr. Harry Edwards goes back a long way. We know each other well. We've been on panels together at Super Bowls and other things. And I interviewed him in August, and I spent lots of time talking to him and then texting and chatting again about this. And again, it's in the book, and obviously the book's going to be out in a couple of weeks. So I can't just divulge a ton of secrets by any means. But I certainly can say that when I talk to someone like Harry Edwards or Brianna Scurry, the goalkeeper, the Black goalkeeper, I think arguably, in fact, not arguably, just she is the first famous superstar Black superstar on the U.S. women's national soccer team, the most famous soccer team on the most famous women's sport team on the planet.
Yeah.
Brianna Scurry, same thing. And about what the WNBA could have done to prepare the players for this moment, not because they're damsels in distress, not because they're lacking or they're weak or they're, just needing help, but because this was such an unusual situation. The WNBA getting this infusion of interest, this incredible interest, like just dropped on its head. Millions of people caring about something that they didn't care about the year before.
Yeah.
Whatever reason. I mean, we can, that's a whole nother story. I mean, why are people following? Why do they love Caitlyn? Whatever. We know some of it. Is there some racial component? You bet there is. I deal with that for sure. But that the players, again, 74% Black League, that what Harry Edwards, Brianna Scurry, and a few others, like, why on earth did the league not have seminars and Zooms and experts available to help the players, again, not because they're needy, but because this is unlike anything we have ever seen in sports, and be ready for it and be ready to accept it, understand it, and move forward. And again, not blaming the athletes. Nope. Blaming the leadership of the WNBA for just not seeing it. And I've got some quotes from some officials too, that are really revealing about just how unprepared the WNBA was for the most important moment in its entire history.
They've had poor leadership for a while. I'll never forget talking to I don't want to reveal his name, but a former NBA player who was very close to someone who was up for like a top job at the WNBA. And as they're interviewing, the league essentially was saying, like, a lot of these like super popular influencer basketball players don't want to play in the WNBA. This was like 4 or 5 years ago. Why? Because like, who wants to go on chartered flights and do all this practice to make like no money? And I could just go on Instagram with my 2 million followers and do some video and get paid to advertise for Nabisco or whatever. And they were struggling to get players to the league. Like, that's what makes it so weird that the league, A, was ill prepared, and B, so many players had the disdain for Clark. Her joining the league, Christine, wouldn't you say that like it elevated everybody? Like what is that? Rising tide lifts all the boats. Isn't that what happened?
Oh, without a doubt. Well, absolutely. I mean, first of all, you can see, it was in the works, but the TV deal is 4 times what it was before. Certainly Caitlyn Clark and these incredible numbers, viewership numbers that have, records, of course, when the other day, when her return to the WNBA was the 3rd highest rated or 3rd highest viewed game on ABC ever, WNBA.
Ever, yeah.
Yeah. Well, what were the first 2? I got in touch with ESPN PR to ask them what were the first 2. Well, of course, they were Caitlyn Clark games, first game of this season and one last year. And so she's 1, 2, and 3, and probably 4, 5, 6, whatever, however many more there are, but that she's been in. The point is that, yes, she, as they say, not only is she moving the needle, she is the needle. And that you would say, or you would think would be a positive development. Had, again, the leadership of the WNBA understood what was coming. And hey, all leagues make mistakes. I've covered the NFL, I've covered Major League Baseball. I mean, we've all covered there, universities, the NCAA. I mean, there are mistakes made by everybody. And so I'm not even necessarily being that critical of the WNBA. I'm just saying, like, what should have been, what could have been, and the voices that I have in the book talking about that. You could kind of see this coming, and why not celebrate it? And if you help everyone understand and celebrate it, then whatever maybe jealousy or hurt feelings or just kind of uncertainty maybe can melt away. And you can understand that because of Caitlyn Clark, the spotlight is on her. Well, I've heard people say this. I'm sure you have too. It's like, oh my gosh, Kelsey Mitchell, what a player.
Yeah.
But
very good.
No one knew.
Nobody knew.
Yeah. People knew, obviously. Now they know. The same with Aaliyah Boston. What an incredible player, and what a great friend of Caitlyn. And the way I have this in the book, where they're, before every game, you're amazing. No, you're amazing. And Caitlyn started it, according to Aaliyah Boston. I asked Aaliyah about, like, how did that get started? These lovely moments that are uplifting for every girl or boy athlete to see how these professionals handle it, and their friendship, and how they support each other, how Caitlyn leads the way on that. She's an optimist. She's a total hard charger in terms of team and loving her teammates. All this stuff is there. But the spotlight is on these women, other women who are going to be paid more because of it, because of Caitlyn. You've got the bargaining agreement, the CBA, open now. That's so essential that they get more money because they get paid almost nothing, the players, which is why Brittany Griner was in Russia. It wasn't the ambiance and, hanging out with the weather. She had to go because she wanted to supplement a very small, basically less than $250,000 salary with the $1 million or so she could get in Russia. So anyway, all this changes Caitlyn Clark is the rising tide that lifts all boats. Take it and run with it.
Yeah.
Some players have. I mean, but I think again, when we see the cheap shot from Marina Mabrey, I mean,
Oh, jeez.
and then of course mimicking the one from Kennedy Carter
Mm.
about a year earlier, really within about what 20 feet on that floor, and almost in the exact same spot in this exact same
Oh,
arena,
that's right. Yeah, yeah.
Cambridge and Indy. Like what on earth? What are you doing? And I'll say this, knock on wood. Thankfully, of course, no one was injured
Yeah.
in any of those skirmishes. There's a lot, and Caitlyn dishes it out too. I mean, we're not saying she's again a wallflower that has to be protected,
Mm.
but how on earth is someone like Marina Mabrey? This is a dead ball situation.
Oh, yeah.
Comes
That's
flying
bad.
in like a freight train and knocks Caitlyn to the ground. What if she's, again, knock on wood, a million times, injured her ankle,
Yeah, broken arm. Like that's
right? And
catastrophic for the league.
because we know when she was gone and missed those few games with the 5 games with the quadriceps strain, we know that they lost more than half of their viewership.
Yeah.
Literally more than half of the viewership of the WNBA, as you know, Jason, disappeared for
Yeah.
one person.
Let
And
me
if you want, as a player, other players, you want her to play because that, of course, helps the economic. It helps your economic future as a player.
pretty soon they're going to start getting stuff off the court as well, marketing opportunities. But let me ask you, this is a tough one. When you were approaching people about the book, did anybody, when you say, hey, question about Caitlyn Clark, did anybody say, I don't want to talk about her? I'm not taking Caitlyn Clark questions. I don't want to contribute to the book.
No one said necessary. I mean, I'm trying to think. Did anyone say no? I don't want to talk about Caitlyn Clark. There were people that got angry with me, and actually, that quite a public thing, actually. And I'm happy to just go into
Was that
it.
the Angel Reese one?
No, that was Dejanay Carrington.
Carrington, right.
When I
Okay.
asked her questions that, of course, actually has nothing to do with the book. I mean, I was at that point reporting for the book, but any journalist should have and would have asked. I did it. I was the one that asked. After Dejanay Carrington in game 1 of the playoffs, Connecticut against Indiana, was swatting at the ball, and her fingers end up hitting Caitlyn Clark in the eye.
With the long fingernails, right.
And the internet, which of course Twitter, X, whatever, is a cesspool. No surprise, everything's running rampant for a couple of days, and there's so many storylines about the WNBA on social media, and millions and millions of people weighing in, jumping in, blaming Dejanay Carrington for trying to stick her fingers in Caitlyn Clark's eyes. Caitlyn did not have a great shooting night. She said it had nothing to do with it. She had a bit of a shiner under her eye, and then she said she was fine the next and had a much better game in game 2. But again, said that had nothing, to her credit, Caitlyn Clark said that was not it. That was not the problem, and made sure of that. And I've got that, of course, in the book as well. Anyway, opportunity to interview Dejanay Carrington. I mean, journalism 101, you have to ask, and you have to ask specifically.
Yeah.
Because that's what everyone's out there. And in fact, as you know, athletes, this is what most athletes, if they have been prepared or understand what the media is, which would be something the WNBA should probably prepare everyone for national scrutiny, that they understand they can hit it out of the park. You want that question.
Yeah.
So then you can then go specifically to the issue the journalist just asked, and you can tell everybody what the truth is, and try to finally nip all the controversy and all the confusion and all the criticism in the butt. And I asked that question, I asked a follow-up, and instead of, Carrington answered it fine, but instead of just moving on, she got mad, other players got mad. It was a whole, big kind of soap opera for a day or two, with her getting involved, yelling at me and 2 other journalists. The next day, it's all in the book. It's kind of an epilogue, because I wanted to keep it away from the magic of Caitlyn Clark and the storytelling, but I needed to deal with this story. And the Players Association actually wanted to ban me for that question.
Oh, that's right. I remember that now. Yeah. Total nonsense.
And because this still is the United States of America, a journalist asking questions that called to ban me, to take my credentials, which of course is the very essence of wanting to ban a journalist, that failed miserably. I had credentials for game 1 of the finals, October 10th in New York. And yeah, it was just a total failure. But it just, again, to me, it almost made me sad. Not for me. I mean, I'm doing my job, and I've done this, thousands of times. People get mad at questions all the time. I mean, when I was covering the Washington football team, the Skins, in the 80s. Oh,
I remember I was a Washington Post reader growing up in Northern Virginia. You guys had, we had, I know Rachel Nichols a little now, but the staff you guys had was just, I mean, it was like basically what like the 27 Yankees, right? Wilbon, Kornheiser, you were there. I think J.A. Adonde, right?
Jay came in and Rachel came in a little bit. Yeah, yes, definitely towards the end. And they were amazing interns. I mean, like that's your intern group. Well, absolutely. And Wilbon, my, of course, college classmate, my first day freshman year, Mike Wilbon and I, like brother and sister to this day. And then we were sitting next to each other. And yeah, so many others, George
That's
Solomon,
cool.
sports center. It was great. But yeah, I mean, you asked tough questions. I mean, this is what you do. You're not their friend, and you're not a PR person. You're there to be a journalist asking questions. And so, yes, people were not happy with my questions. And then, there was some coverage of that whole thing where people who really didn't even know what I was doing and what had hardly been around me were quoted in a story like saying I'm always asking about Caitlyn Clark, like this was a problem. I cannot tell you, Jason, how many times covering golf, covering Tiger, for the whole time, his entire, career, that you've got people asking questions, and 3 or 4 of them are writing Tiger Woods books, right? I mean, who
Yeah.
cares? Yet somehow this became a big deal. And I'm shocked that there aren't more Caitlyn Clark books out now. I'm thrilled, mine is coming in a couple of weeks, but like what, like, how, again, I think that the league just clearly did a terrible job, or somebody did a terrible job. And I do, again, certainly have
Mhm.
stories and news in the book of not preparing them to say, this is what journalists do, that you've got national scrutiny now because of Caitlyn Clark. I don't know, maybe you hate that, but national scrutiny should bring more money to everybody. That's not
Yeah.
my job. That's, that just comes from endorsements and whatever, and salaries. And somehow this turned into a terrible thing when you're asking an athlete to answer a question, or asking 2 questions that allow her to clear the air, allow her to, literally hit a fat pitch out of the park. And
Mhm.
instead, somehow it's seen as something bad. And, I'll leave you with this. I'd ask men those questions, I've asked Tiger Woods about steroid, implications of steroids or HGH use, rumors that were flying around at the Masters. I'll ask any question of anyone. That's my job,
Yeah.
to serve the readers, the viewers, whatever. And are we saying then that women cannot handle questions that men can handle? Is that what we're saying? I mean, I was giving to me, the WNBA, the greatest respect I could by treating it like the NFL,
Yeah.
treating it like the Olympics, asking those same questions of women that I, of course, would ask of men, that no one would even bat an eyelash about me asking a male athlete those questions. That was incredibly enlightening and disappointing, because these women, they're tough, they're strong, they can handle it. And how this turned into something, it's just really surprising. Is that what we're saying in 2024? That women athletes cannot handle questions that male athletes can? Boy, if that's what we're saying, if that's what the WNBA Players Association is saying, my goodness, what a sad state of
Yeah.
affairs.
We can wrap up, Christine, real quick. So the Olympic snub of Clark. Clark seemed to handle it well, was like, hey, I could use the time off. I went right from college to the WNBA. But we know that that team would have got way more coverage had they had Caitlyn Clark. They still did win. I think they won by like 2 in the championship. I don't know. I didn't really follow it. I'm going to be honest. They didn't have Clark. In your reporting, was there anything behind the scenes from players on the team, maybe Diana Taurasi, saying we don't want her on the team? Was there any of that you heard?
Certainly, it was crystal clear. There's a committee of 6 that made the decision. But then there was also the coach, Cheryl Reeve, who was not officially on the committee and making the decision, but she's the head coach.
Yeah.
And it doesn't even take much reporting. I mean, I reported this at the time for USA Today, and now it's in the book. Cheryl Reeve is literally kind of going after 22-year-old Caitlyn Clark. By the way, who does that? Middle-aged, anyone, any authority figure targeting a 22-year-old, like our game's not on TV, but hers is, and and some unknown person says, yeah, because of Caitlyn Clark, and then Cheryl Reeve, immediately, or not immediately, but then replies on Twitter, X. Yeah, that part. I mean, like, Caitlyn Clark is in the pool to be selected potentially for the team, and you've got a coach on social media looking, directing comments right at that person. I've never seen anything like that. And I've covered the Olympics since '84 in LA. And, that is just no way to pick a team. That's no way to act. And how that was allowed by USA Basketball, beyond me. But to answer your question, yes, there certainly was a mood and a feeling that she was not going to make that team, that they wanted to leave her home, which is unbelievable. The woman that has just passed not only all the female basketball players, but the male ones, Pistol Pete Maravich, to be the greatest scorer in Division I college basketball history, male or female. Such a big name, bringing eyeballs everywhere, opening up the game to countries. I had a Brazilian journalist come up to me in Paris and say, "Where's Caitlyn Clark?"
Oh, wow.
I had a British journalist who asked me at the Masters, explain the Caitlyn Clark thing to him, and he said, I couldn't wait to see her at the Olympics. Oh my God, what a missed opportunity. What sport doesn't want to reach a global audience? Women's basketball had that opportunity. That's why the NHL is in the Olympics, the Winter Olympics. That's why the NFL plays overseas.
Yeah.
You want to reach people. And now, for those who say, well, her stats weren't good, well, her statistics on the day it happened, I broke the news on June 7th into the morning of June 8th, and her statistics were better than Diana Taurasi's and some of the other guards that they picked.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So this notion she was playing poorly is just wrong.
Yeah.
It is just absolutely wrong. And I wanted to get to the bottom of why several reporters felt this way and wanted to highlight negative, be much more negative about Caitlyn Clark and minimizing her play when she was already playing so much better than most people thought she would, and obviously a lot of the reporting indicated. So I did not find a conspiracy. I do not have a conspiracy that they were all in cahoots. But consider this. On June 6th, Gino Auriemma, who I like very much, and known him for a long time, get along with him. Of course, the legendary UConn coach just won his 12th national title. He goes on Dan Patrick, and he talks about the delusional fan base, following Caitlyn Clark. Who would ever say that? If you've got new fans, you accept them.
Yeah, they're delusional.
What is Roger Goodell calling some of the nutty fans that show up, bare-chested in Buffalo and minus 20 degrees, delusional? No, you say, thanks for buying tickets and buy, jerseys and come back. So there was this negativity from Gino that occurred. And then the next day later that night, you have the decision, you get the news comes out that Caitlyn Clark is not on the Olympic team. I am not saying that is a quid pro quo. I'm not saying
timing is interesting though.
But I think it does show the mood of the basketball establishment. And I do say that in the book, and talk about how it's just so strange. Instead of going, this is yippee, this is the greatest opportunity we've ever had. Let's go. Let's get all of these players. Again, to your point, I've covered all these Olympic basketball games. I've been there. The press section is mostly tumbleweeds, few other reporters. Most of the guys that cover the Olympics would laugh, like, "Oh, where are you going?" I said, "I'm going to the women's Olympic, basketball gold medal game." And they're like, "Why would you do that? They're going to win."
We're going to win.
You've got stories on, soccer and whatever. And so they didn't get the coverage they deserved. All of those great players, Asia Wilson, so many others that deserved more attention, did not get it. The TV ratings went down, not up. The media coverage, to your point, not there. Paltry coverage. I predicted it. I hate to say I was right. I wish I'd been wrong. It was right. And it was just an incredible missed opportunity. At the key moment, you bring collegians, Rebecca Lobo made the team, Diana Taurasi. This is the collegian you bring at this moment. And they failed miserably. And again, I think certainly the undercurrent of feeling towards Caitlyn Clark by the basketball establishment cannot be ignored. And clearly that committee, includes Dawn Staley and others, they made the choice. We do not want Caitlyn Clark on our Olympic team. Can you believe how history, not only right now, but how history will judge that one? And they paid the price in terms of ratings and interest. And it's just a shame because what could have been for that team with the spotlight that could have been shining on it, not only for them, but can you imagine girls in Africa who never got a chance to watch women's basketball? Caitlyn Clark's on TV, but she's hardly playing, right? She would have been on the bench a lot of it. But now you're seeing maybe 5 Black women playing for the United States, and you're a black, a little Black girl, obviously in Africa. How inspiring is that? You're not going to get that game on TV unless you've got the attention magnet, Caitlyn Clark, to bring that game and put that game on TV.
Could have been like the 92 Dream Team where Jordan and company basically were signing autographs with their opponents after the game. And that really has made basketball a global game, right? Were you at that Olympics?
I was. I was actually covering a lot of swimming and gymnastics and track and field. So I was probably at some of the great track and field. But yeah, I was there. And I remember I was at the press conference, that first press conference. It was incredible. Caitlyn Clark, right, Jason, would have been a personal version of the Dream Team.
100%, yeah.
Individualized version of that. And they decided, no, truly the worst Olympic team selection I have ever seen in my 41 years of covering the Olympics. And frankly, appalling that the powers that be in USA Basketball and the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee allowed that kind of behavior from Cheryl Reeve and others to continue. Just absolutely not the way an Olympic team should be selected.
All right, Christine Brennan, the book On Her Game, Caitlyn Clark and the Revolution in Women's Sports. It's out July, I believe, 8th, you said?
That's correct. People can pre-order now. And I'll be going around the country, a lot of stops in Iowa, Indiana. They put it all on social media. Hopefully I'll see a lot of folks out there.
Going to be big. Congratulations on all your success and great career. And keep up the good work, Christine.
Well, you too, Jason. Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.